I am sure it feels that way.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the December 16th Planning Commission meeting for the City of Murfreesboro. We'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum present today, and per the governor's executive order, he is still allowing participation by electronic means. So we have two of our members, Mr. Ronnie Martin and Mr. Chase Salas, that are participating via Zoom. So we will be calling all of our taking roll call for any of our votes today. We will start. Our first item will be to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2020 and December 2nd, 2020 Planning Commission meetings and the December 1st, 2020 Special Planning Commission meeting. If everyone has had a chance to review those minutes, if we have any additions or corrections, please let us know. And if not, we would just like a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
Motion and approval submitted as submitted. So we need a roll call for minutes approval.
Commissioner Garland.
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Russell.
Aye.
Commissioner Silas. Commissioner Silas. Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. So minutes do stand approved. Item 4 on our agenda is the consent agenda. We have 3 items there today. David Floyd, final plat for 3 lots on 1.8 acres, zoned RS-15, located along Sulphur Springs Road. John David Floyd is the developer. Item B is Safari Pet Resort, a site plan for a parking lot expansion at existing kennel on 1.5 acres, zoned CP, located along Las Casas Pike. Charles Cleveland is the developer. And item C is the crossings of 3 rivers, re-subdivision of lots 1 and 12, final plat for 4 lots on 0.36 acres, zoned PRD, located along Hospitality Lane. 3 Rivers Rutherford LLC is the developer. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like removed to have further discussion? And if not, we will be ready for a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland.
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Russell.
Aye.
Commissioner Silas.
Aye.
Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Consent agenda passes. Next, we have the Gateway Design Overlay. We have 1 item today. It is Robert Rose Village East, Lot 5. Initial design review of a 14,005 square foot commercial center on 2.4 acres, zoned MU and GDO 1, located along Robert Rose Drive and Lothric Way. Fa Du Lee, developer. And Ms. Green, how are you this afternoon?
Good, thank you. Good evening or good afternoon. Our only item tonight or this afternoon is for you to consider initial design review for a commercial center building. So that's a type of building that is a small retail strip center. It is for a building that's approximately 14,000 square feet, and it's located on a corner lot. It's on the corner of Lothric Way and Robert Rose Drive. It's a part of the Robert Rose Village East Master Plan development, which also includes familiar landmarks such as Krispy Kreme, the racetrack gas station. There's some apartments there, self-storage, and a bank as well. This is located, like I mentioned, north of Lothric Way and east of Robert Rose Drive. It will not have a separate access onto Robert Rose Drive. However, it will share access points as shown in the master plan. The proposed building is a single-story structure and is oriented toward the street with a higher functioning classification, which is Robert Rose Drive. There are also some additional treatments done to the secondary front that faces Lothric Way. Of course, this is initial design review, and a primary reason for having initial design review is so they can get feedback regarding the architecture for this development. They did receive one round of comments from staff and have been able to address those. The building, of course, is predominantly brick, and there are 4 colors of brick, and I'll pass this material board around for you to look at. And I'll invite Mr. Lowen to the lectern in just a moment. The initial submission had some white ephes, which of course is something that Planning Commission looks at pretty closely and isn't something that we allow. But Mr. Lowen, the architect for the project, was able to substitute a white brick. And of course, white brick might also sound concerning, but I looked at the submittal that they provided, and it looks somewhat similar to what we approved at Mazda. And so they had a white and black brick on the building, and of course, that, like I mentioned, that probably can set off some alarm bells. But the material board, I think, will be a better representation for you to get an idea of what they mean by the white and black brick. And they have the mortar colors are companion colors, so it doesn't cause it to stand out like a black brick with a white mortar. And so the samples of the mortar are there as well. We provided some preliminary feedback for the plan. They were able to address those, so I don't anticipate any major site plan issues at final design review, which I expect you'll consider during next month's meeting. They were able to add some variation in the roof line and the wall plane because it was a rather flat building, and they've been able to break it up and I think add interest in the building by doing such. They provided a sightline study in the submittal that shows that the rooftop units are being screened by the parapets on all 4 sides. So at this time, I'll invite Mr. Lowen to the lectern to provide some additional details for the plan. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I would ask that any of your approval be conditioned to staff comments.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Mr. Lowen, come in.
Hi, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Just to describe the building as well, we basically designed this building to be a 4-sided structure, so it would carry all the materials on all 4 elevations, like Margaret Ann had mentioned. All the canopies are metal canopies, a little bit of metal at the top of the building, which is pre-finished metal coping. Everything's very clean, very consistent. Parapets, as discussed, are raised to allow us to cover any mechanical on the roof to be hidden. There's no mechanical on site. So we've just tried to kind of keep everything really enclosed and consistent with all the materials. Storefront, sconces, everything's consistent in color. And everything is on the material board there that would represent the building materials. So if you have any questions, I can definitely answer that. The brick, being a white brick, was more of kind of an off-white, and we did use it also on a retail center on Fortress Boulevard. So it turned out to be very nice. It's not very bright or anything. It's got a very monotone, clean, but bright look. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lowen while he's at the podium? Okay, all right. Anything else to add on that, or are you?
Not really, just the fact that we've tried to just keep everything consistent on all 4 elevations because it's very visible to the other streets around the area. So we just wanted to keep a very consistent material look and keep the proportions consistent.
Looks very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions, comments, guidance for this initial design review? Anything they need to do before it comes back for final design?
There are no comments. I think it looks good. I'll make a motion we approve subject to staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have Plats and Plans, and we have 5 items there today. The first one is University Villas and Lion property, master plan amendment for 438 lots on 266 acres, zoned CH, RM16, RS10, RS6, and RSA Type 2, located along John Bragg Highway. Front Street Partners is the developer. And Mr. Blomley.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, both present and by Zoom. Our first item under Platts and Plans today is an amended master plan for the University Villas and Lion property subdivision. I doubt that's the name that the subdivision will ultimately have, but it's named after the ownership groups of the 2 parcels that comprise the subdivision. This is the same property that you saw last January, I believe, for the original master plan approval, at the same time that the farmhouse apartment project was receiving site plan approval. So farmhouse apartments is one of the lots that is in this plan. The entire development is going to be served by a step system. Sanitary sewer is not currently available to it. So nothing is changing with regards to how it will be served for sanitary sewer services. It will still be on step system. They received approval from the Water Resources Department for additional lots overall on the property. And so it's not requesting a rezoning to enable additional lots. They were actually just permitted to have additional units on this property under the existing zoning based on the step capacity. So they approached us and submitted this plan that shows a slightly different road configuration. The road configuration is roughly the same as what the Planning Commission approved back last winter, but there are a couple of tweaks to get it to the point where they could get the additional lots on the property. The property is zoned a combination of CH and RM16 at the front, just south of John Bragg Highway, and then it transitions into the single family, which is zoned RSA Type 2, RS6, and RS12. The total number of lots that they proposed back in January of last year, including the 6 lots at the front that comprised the commercial and the multifamily, was 331 lots, I believe. Their revised master plan shows a total of 438 lots, so they're looking to increase the number of single-family lots on this tract by 106. There are 2 major transportation plan improvements that impact this plan, MTI, midterm improvement number 18, and MTI number 19, and that is, those are the extension of Haven Drive, which runs through the property east and west, and the extension of Irby Lane. It's hard to imagine Irby Lane going through this property, but it'd be the eventual extension of Irby Lane going through this property. Just like with the master plan that was approved in January of this year, this plan accommodates the construction of those 2 transportation improvements through the development tract. The plan is generally in good order. We would ask that you approve it subject to all staff comments so that we can continue to work out any additional staff comments when the applicants submit the preliminary plat for the first section. This is just the master plan review and approval. If this is approved, then you will see preliminary plats in the future with more detailed construction drawings of how they will develop each given section. I would ask you to add an additional comment onto your conditional approval on the master plan that was approved earlier. I keep saying last year. It was earlier this year, January of 2020. Seems like it was eons ago, but it was actually January of this year. And it showed one more neighborhood park area than this particular master plan shows. And so we would ask that you condition any approval of this amended master plan on one additional neighborhood park area being added. And those would be owned and operated by the homeowners association. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Chad Gilbert's here. There he is. I think he changed chairs on me. Mr. Chad Gilbert of the development group and ownership group is here if you have any questions for him. And I believe Mr. Jack Parker, the engineer with Catalyst Design Group, is available by Zoom this afternoon.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Blomley or any of the developers at this point? I just was going to. So we're increasing from 331 lots to 438 lots.
Correct.
By this amendment that we're doing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But it's all within the same zoning. They're not asking for any zoning changes. It's this amendment is simply a function of the Water Resources Department making the determination that the step system will support additional lots.
So before, did we not have an idea that they would or wouldn't, or it just hadn't been determined?
I'm sorry?
So before we approved the 330, at that time, did we not know that it would have the potential to get 100 more lots? It's just a lot more lots.
No, yeah, I think that there was additional study and analysis done by the Water Resources Department, and they concluded that additional lots could be supported.
Okay.
I think I'll make a comment based upon our discussion on Monday with respects to the Water Resources Department and that presentation. The fact that this is on its own step system, granted there's a lot more lots, we're not going to be pulling at the capacity of the sewer system, which was one of those conversations that we had on Monday. So I think we need to kind of keep that in mind with respects to, and he's not asking for a change in zoning. It's the zoning is allowing him to do these number of lots.
And did it work out that these lots are kind of spread out and scattered in among different pieces and parts of these zones, or is the entire increase, for example, all in the, I guess, RS6 or RSA type 2?
I think the increase is spread out a little bit. And I don't know what's wrong with the viewer of this. Normally I would be able to zoom in, but there's something going on with the viewer. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? But I think the increase is spread throughout the development. They've had to shift some streets a little bit to be able to get the additional lots, but there's still a good deal of open space in this development that will be used for recreational amenities, detention, and for the step system.
Okay.
Matthew, is there any change to the number of kind of public parking areas to also be increased with the number of additional units?
Ms. Garland, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to ask Mr. Parker, if he is on Zoom right now, if he can answer that. Mr. Parker may not be. Mr. Parker is not with us by Zoom.
Oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
there you are.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. So,
All right.
with the additional amenity space that Matthew is referring to, we'll also add a male cluster kiosk area there that will help to serve those additional units.
So an additional mail kiosk, but are there any other additional, like, guest parking? Is that what you're asking, really, Jennifer, throughout the area, or any additional?
Mr. Parker, I think they're wanting to know if there is a net increase, decrease, or status quo of the number of guest parking areas.
I see. It's proportionally, it's the same as the previous master plan.
So that means there's an increase.
So it sounds like there's an increase in parking because there's an increase in units. Is that correct?
Well, each lot will have its own code-required number of parking spaces. So if there's more lots, then there will be more total parking spaces.
Right. I think what they're asking is the number of guest parking areas has that increased, decreased, or stayed the same?
Right. So that number has stayed the same.
Perhaps some additional parking could be added in when you add the additional neighborhood park area.
That's correct. That's kind of where I was going at the beginning, and then I didn't quite grasp exactly the question that was being asked.
So I guess we should confirm right now, are there guest parking areas in here?
Yes, ma'am. I believe there are. If I could.
There are.
Okay.
I see them with the mail kiosks, which obviously there needs to be
Yeah.
parking spaces for those, but
Throughout the development, like near the, really this cluster
center, yeah.
over where the density is obviously quite more. Are there any additional guest parking areas along any of those streets, or is it just the parking that would be allowed per lot?
Well, and one thing to bear in mind is that they will be required to meet their minimum parking requirements on site. They'll be required to have their minimum 4 parking spaces in the driveway, and so the guest parking areas will really be kind of a bonus. They're not required by ordinance.
I just wanted to make sure at a minimum, if they'd had them before, that we consider increasing them proportionately if they're increasing the density and number of units. I just think they bring a lot of benefit to these neighborhoods where you have folks that get upset when people park in the street, and it just kind of brings a sense of stewardship to the neighborhood.
And certainly, we're not looking at a planned development, so we can't require any of these, but it's just talking about as Ms. Garland is mentioning, just the functionality of a neighborhood in general, and the look and feel of when you pull into an area, is it nothing but cars parked up and down the street because they can't get in the driveway, because they can't get in the garage, that type of thing, when you have these dense areas.
But the majority of the lots are RS6 and RS12, and those are zoning districts that we would not count garage parking. They're required to have 4 parking spaces in the driveway. So, if the Planning Commission's amenable, I would assume, and I can't speak for them, but that Mr. Parker and Mr. Gilbert would be amenable to finding some solutions after the fact for some additional guest parking areas.
And I think, like we say, it's not like we want to require anything that's not, that's above and beyond what you're required to do, but to try to make your development a better development is all we're trying to do, so.
I think Mr. Gilbert is nodding in acknowledgement.
It's the same number of parking kiosks as well, correct? Because again,
Oh, the mail kiosks?
it sounds like we have set ratios that really define how many you have to have. Is that right?
The mail kiosks, it's kind of a funny thing. The post office actually likes there just to be one. So whether there will be mail kiosks at each one of those locations, I don't know. That will have to go through a separate post office review. I think it's a convenience for the residents to have multiple ones throughout the development, but then the post office wants to be able to serve them as efficiently as possible, and they can be as efficient as possible at one centralized kiosk location. So I think that is probably something that we'll have to continue to work at after the fact with the post office.
So it's almost like we need to come up with, based on the number of mailboxes we have per kiosk, some appropriate number of parking spaces that are required, because if you're always going to have one per development, some developments might have 12 lots and some developments are going to have 200 lots. We obviously need a whole lot more parking spaces at the larger development kiosk than we would have at the one street development that has a kiosk.
Right. Yeah, I think, and we try to be reasonable with the developer. Mail service is not a city service, and it's the developer's discretion whether they put these kiosks in the development. They have the ability to say, we're going to require all future homeowners to get P.O. boxes. So, but if they voluntarily choose to put the kiosks in the development, then we want to make sure it's a workable plan and it's not going to cause any traffic issues or parking issues. So
Right.
we're certainly cognizant of that.
Learning something new and different every day.
Mm-hmm. I've spent more time on mail kiosks over the last 2 years than I care to admit.
Yeah.
Probably most developers as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so any other questions, thoughts, or concerns on this master plan amendment?
If there are none, I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments, and with the hopes that the developer will look into additional guest parking.
And the second neighborhood park.
In the second neighborhood park, as Matthew mentioned.
The additional neighborhood
Yeah.
park.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next item is Traveler's Trace preliminary plat for 67 lots on 25.1 acres, zoned RS10, located along Bills Road. Randy Friedsam is the developer. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next item under Platts and Plans is a preliminary plat for a new subdivision located along the north side of Beals Road. It's actually just a little bit to the southwest of the last property that we looked at. This subdivision will also be on step system. It was annexed into the city about 3 or 4 years ago, zoned RS10. Mr. Friedsam had plans to develop it at that time, but has held off for a few years and now brings us a 67-lot subdivision on step. Here's the preliminary plat. As you can see, on the west side of the development, there is the step lot, and then there is a detention pond along Beals Road on the west side of the development. and it's a pretty standard RS10 subdivision with 67 lots. The developer and his team have been good working with us on addressing some of our concerns during the process. We've had a dialogue with them about several opportunities. One was with the lots backing up to Veals Road. We requested that they put in a landscape buffer and some berming along in the common area along Veals Road to provide some privacy for the homeowners that are going to back up to Veals Road. Also, we recommended that for the quality of life of the development, that they provide a small neighborhood park, and they've done that. And so there aren't a whole lot of outstanding comments. We would recommend that any approval be made subject to all staff comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Friedsum is in the audience today if you have any questions for him, as is his engineer, Mr. Enoch Gerald.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blomley. Any questions, comments regarding this preliminary plat?
There are none. I'll make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll
Appreciate
second.
the developer working with staff, too.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jacob?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Our next item under Plats and Plans is Shelton Grove, Section 1, a master plan and preliminary plat for 60 lots on 13.4 acres, zoned PUD, located along Manson Pike and Manson Court. Shelton Grove LLC is the developer. Mr. Cooper, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Jones and Planning Commission members. This item before you is a master plan and preliminary plat for Shelton Grove. This plan, some of you remember, was submitted as a plan development and approved by Planning Commission in 2018 and City Council in early 2019. The master plan is consistent with the approved PRD, with the exception of a section that includes the right-of-way of Manson Court. This was never approved to be abandoned by City Council or TDOT. We have proposed that this master plan be approved by Planning Commission without including the improvements in the Manson Court right-of-way. If and when this right-of-way is abandoned, the applicant will need to come back to Planning Commission with a master plan revision that you can see on this page that includes their section that is in that right-of-way, right there. Manson Court will continue to provide access as currently laid out to the east of the subdivision, which the county approved to be a contractor storage yard for Rosso Construction. If and when that right-of-way is abandoned, the developer of Shelton Square will provide access to the lot via a private drive to that site, which will also act as an alley to the townhomes that you can see right there. And they will have garage access to that alley. The preliminary plat for Section 1 reaches to the entrance on Manson Pike and to the northeast of the subdivision to access the sewer that is currently being extended along Shelton Square, which is to the north of the subdivision. It will include the parking lot for the amenity lot, which will include the mail kiosk for the entire development. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And of course, we ask that any approval of this master plan and preliminary plat be subject to all staff comments. We also have some members of SEC here that could answer any questions if you guys worked on it.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Can you just, since we're talking about mail kiosk, can you show us where this one is on this development?
Sure. I'll show you on the master plan sheet so you can see the whole thing. It's right there.
Oh. Okay. Very nice, thank you.
So ample parking, I believe.
Can I just ask, so the 60 lots that are on this preliminary plat, are the ones that we're seeing right there?
Yeah, so there's 12 town, sorry.
You would come back with the ones, is what you're saying, that if they get the right-of-way?
Yeah, that would be part of another section.
Okay.
They only, with this preliminary plat, are doing the 12 townhome lots right here and the 48 single-family that stretch up. They would have to do new sections for,
Okay.
yes. There you go.
But that does give us our master plan there. Okay. Other questions or comments regarding this master plan and preliminary plat?
If there are none, I'll move for approval, subject to all staff comments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next item is River Landing Section 1, Master Plan and Preliminary Plat for 19 lots on 34.6 acres, zoned PUD, located along Northwest Broad Street. D.R. Horton, developer. Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much. Hello again. We have another master plan and preliminary plat, this time for River Landing. As most of you are aware, this plan was approved by City Council earlier this year and is located on Northwest Broad Street. To the west of this development is the North Star Drive Industrial Park. The master plan is consistent with the approved plan development for the property. Section 1 includes 5 commercial lots. I'll find the page for you. So we have 5 commercial lots, 4 townhome lots, 1 amenity lot, and 9 single-family lots. The intersection of Northwest Broad and Oswin Drive, which you can see right there, will be a signalized intersection, and the intersection of Northwest Broad and Feetham Street will be served by a stop sign. That's down here. A few of the townhome units will need to be removed. The ones right here, I think 3 or 4 of these will need to be removed because of the proximity to the water quality protection area. They couldn't make grading work. This change has already been reflected on their site plan and will need to be reflected on their master plan before, obviously, final approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And if you could make any approval of the master plan and preliminary plat subject to all staff comments.
And so are you losing townhomes in that group right there and then this other further to?
Oh, it's south, sorry.
That one too?
Yeah. Katie knows more about it than I do. She could help.
Oh,
Matt Taylor was able to alter the grading to make those units work, so they're not actually being removed.
okay. So those are not being removed, but the ones that Mr.
The grading plan works now so that all the units shown are correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No. Okay, what other questions or comments? If none, we're ready for a motion.
Make a motion to approve, subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. Our next item is Amanda Square, site plan for 12 multifamily residential dwelling units on 1.4 acres, zoned RM16, located along the east side of Southeast Broad Street. Elite Development Associates, LLC, is the developer. And I believe Ms. Kerr is presenting this, and she is joining us via Zoom today. Is this correct, Ms. Kerr? There she is.
Thank you, Chair Jones, members of the Planning Commission. Some of you probably remember this project from earlier this year as Villas at Amanda Square. The property was previously approved for 23 single-family dwelling units prior to the sewer allocation ordinance. That project never materialized, and the applicant is now proposing that this project for Amanda Square, a residential development for 12 multifamily attached dwelling units. This property is zoned RM16, and all RM16 zoned properties must be approved by Planning Commission. This development consists of 2 lots and is located along Southeast Broad Street. The site is 1.46 acres, and access is via Southeast Broad Street. The proposed development consists of 2 two-story, 2 buildings, 1 5-unit building facing Southeast Broad Street, and 1 7-unit building at the rear of the property. The building materials are brick, veneer, and cemented siding. The elevations are real similar to those of what they proposed in the beginning on the previous approval. And staff asked that any approval be conditioned upon any outstanding staff comments. I'm available to answer any questions, and SEC's representatives are also available via Zoom to answer any questions you might have as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Kerr. Any questions or comments for Ms. Kerr or the SEC team regarding this Amanda Square site plan?
If there are none, I'll move for approval subject to all staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, next we have new business. We had 2 items on our agenda, and I believe item B has been withdrawn. So item A is the annexation plan of services and annexation petition for approximately 5.5 acres located along Gresham Lane. Alcorn Properties, LLC is the applicant. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to fill in for Ms. Rush today. We have a annexation request for property that's located along the west side of Gresham Lane. There's an existing single-family home on the property right now. The rest of the property consists of a stormwater management area for the Glendale Subdivision, which is a county subdivision located in this particular area around this parcel. Mr. Alcorn has purchased the property, and he wishes to develop a 7-lot subdivision. So one of the lots would house the existing single-family residence, and there would be 6 lots on the subdivision that he could build single-family homes. There's no companion zoning request because in our zoning ordinance, if property is zoned residential in the county, then it automatically comes in as RS-15 once annexed into the city. and the lots that Mr. Alcorn is proposing to develop are all compliant with the RS-15 zoning district. So if the property is annexed, then he could move into the subdivision process by submitting a preliminary plat. The stormwater management area that is on this property for the Glendale subdivision, if Mr. Alcorn develops it, he would look to make that stormwater management area a more formal stormwater management area. What's there right now, I think, is kind of somewhat the property in its natural state that has served as kind of a detention area. But Mr. Alcorn would be able to get in there and potentially improve the drainage conditions by creating a more formal detention area on that property. I wish that I had a map for you that could back out a little bit from the view that's shown on this map. This property, if you look at it in the larger view, the larger scheme of things, is pretty much sandwiched in an area that's sandwiched by the city limits. If you think about areas that are in the county, there are areas that we would consider annexing, and you think about how much further out from the center of town areas along Veterans Parkway are compared to this, then you think about this, for all intents and purposes, it is in the city limits of Murfreesboro. And kind of for those reasons, we actually annexed it we voted to annex it back in 2006 because we had essentially encircled this area with the city limits. There was litigation to stop the city from annexing the area, and after there was a change in state law, we ended up dropping the annexation. So this property has actually already been voted to be annexed once, but it never actually became official and was annexed. So that's just kind of putting it into context that it is really in an area that, for all intents and purposes, while it may not be in the political jurisdiction of the city of Murfreesboro, it is in the city. So Mr. Alcorn proposes some drainage improvements on the property, and also, if this property is developed, he would be required to submit fees in lieu of construction for future improvements to Gresham Lane. With this being proposed single-family residential development, the impact on city services, especially given the fact that we are already providing services to the properties along the east side of Gresham Lane, the impact to city services by the addition of 7 single-family dwellings would be relatively minor. And so for those reasons, we think it's a good candidate for annexation, especially given the fact that Mr. Alcorn is proposing to develop it under the RS-15 zoning district. One thing I did want to bring up, Mr. Alcorn is in the process of working through some issues with the existing CC&Rs on the property, which prohibit the property from, and Mr. Alcorn can correct me if I'm misstating what is in the CCRs, but what he has relayed to us is that I believe that he can't subdivide the property without a certain percentage of signatures from the existing subdivision. So Mr. Alcorn is in the process of working through that right now. We as staff told him that while we want to make sure that he has gotten past a certain point by the time he gets to City Council, that we did not object to going ahead and taking it to the Planning Commission and scheduling a public hearing so that he can continue to be working through that process, the process of working through those CC&Rs while the annexation is considered by the Planning Commission. We would recommend that the Planning Commission schedule this item for a public hearing for the January 6th, 2021 night meeting. Mr. Alcorn is present if you have any questions for him, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blomley. Any questions for Mr. Blomley or Mr. Alcorn regarding this potential annexation plan of services?
If none, I move that we set a public hearing for January 6th of 21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Salas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye. A public hearing scheduled for January 6th. Thank you. All right. Next, we are moving on to staff reports and other business. And Mr. Ives, I believe you have something for us.
I believe I got nominated to be Mr. Huddleston today.
Okay. So I will just read this item and let you get started on it. We have a mandatory referral for various property transfers pertaining to road improvements along BC Road and River Rock Boulevard associated with the West Point development, and the City of Murfreesboro is the applicant. All right, Mr. Ives.
Chair
Thank
Jones
you.
and Planning Commissioners, this is one we're kind of excited about. We're preparing to make some big steps toward a connectivity issue that will be very good for many of our residents that traverse this area. Back in 2017, what we're showing up there on the screen right now is a connector that we called short-term connector 6A, and that's the long horizontal red line that goes from River Rock Boulevard across the river and across I-24, then jogs a bit to the north and then connects with State Route 99 in New Salem. In connection with the development further south on this property that we called Costco, there was an agreement that the westerly portion of this cross connector would be completed within 3 years after Costco opens. So the next strip we show you here is a strip of land that Costco has actually deeded to the city, I'm sorry, not Costco, Mickey Mitchell has deeded to the city, and Mitchell has agreed to construct this continuation of Beasy Road up to where that the unnamed connector road that's going to run east-west was originally just sort of scheduled out or sketched out to be. So what we're Mr. Mitchell now has a contract to sell this tract of land here that is surrounded by what we're showing as the extension of Beasy Road. There's about 14 acres, and that's above the Lazy Days development that's under construction right now. So he has a contract to sell that. That buyer and their engineers, the city engineers, and Mickey and other consulting engineers have gotten together to plan this road connection. And what we have come up with is this. So rather than run that connector road straight across, which really was not an engineered plan, that was a concept to connect one piece to the other, and it was just drawn as a straight line. Excuse me, what we're proposing to do is run, so this section here it is on the south edge of the Racket Club lot. That is carved out as a separate lot from the Racket Club. Mitchell will deed that about 75-foot tract to the city for the building of the connector road. The city will declare a public road right-of-way over this area that I'm circling right now, which is over our Greenway Trail that runs underneath this. So the bridge will go over that Greenway Trail. The future owner of this 14-acre tract will convey right-of-way along this route over to the interstate to the city. This buyer will also agree to construct this shorter piece of Beasy Road extension to bring it up to the connector road. To make up for some of the land that is being acquired from the buyer of this 14-acre tract, the city will deed this strip across the top that I'm showing right here to that owner of that of the 14-acre tract. They will use that as a landscape buffer for their tract. Now, this triangular tract here to the top of the 14 acres is owned by the city. It was borrowed material for building I-24 many years ago. It's low property. It's of little development value. It was in the course of settling with Swanson's for the acquisition of this phase of the Greenway Trail that runs on the other side of the interstate and all the way over to Bridge Avenue. In the course of that transaction, Swanson's gave that triangle piece to the city. It's considered part of the park area, part of the Greenway Park. We haven't done anything with it. There's no real plan to do anything with it. But along this property line, it's a very steep drop. Once you get over the property line down, it's a steep drop down to the level of that lot. So without plans to do anything with it and a very heavy natural fence row in there already, it seems appropriate to us to make that be the landscape buffer for the 14-acre tract down here to provide them with more usable area on their lot. The final little piece of this is over here. There is a small triangle, 150 or so square feet, that the city will need to acquire from the owner of this property here where the cursor is right now. We have reached out to make contact with them. Hopefully we will be able to reach a consensual transaction. We've not yet appraised anything. All of that we're requiring is either underwater or in floodway where it's of little practical use. So we're hopeful that we can complete that transaction. The city then, as we agreed with the Costco transaction, the city will build the connector road from River Rock over to a connection with Beasley. And we have already committed to make that, to complete that construction within 3 years after Costco opens, which we expect will be sometime this summer. You may have noticed in the paper, they have announced that Costco has obtained all of its building permits now, so you will most likely, if you drive by that area here in the very near future, there'll be a lot of activity out there on that lot. Mickey, or actually the person, the company that buys this from Mickey, will build this piece of extension of Beasley Road. Later in the course of development, from Beasley Road on over to the interstate, and then across the interstate, and ultimately over to New Salem will be in the future. There's no plans at this point for when that will be done or actually who will be involved in that. So what we're asking for is your recommendation of approval to acquire this property from Mr. Mitchell, to acquire property from this homeowner, to dedicate right-of-way over the top of the trail for the bridge, to accept the right-of-way from the buyer of this 14-acre tract, and then to give back this that we already had gotten from Mr. Mitchell. We'll deed that property to the buyer, and then the buyer will have a new description of a deed for this stretch of the extension of Beasley Road. Is that muddy enough? Be happy to try to answer any questions. Mr. Huddleston is here. Or if you have a drainage question, for sure he could know more about it than I do. But as I said, we're excited that this is a big step toward a major transportation goal. And as y'all recall, we're limited by our ability to cross the river and to cross the railroad tracks and to cross I-24. And this will be, ultimately, it'll be a few years before it's complete, but it's the first step toward another way to get across I-24 without, for these folks here, going through either 96, 99, or Church Street. Happy to answer any questions.
David, curious question. What does, without looking at a map, where does Beasley Road go? What does it connect with? Is is there any
Do I have-
major thoroughfare that it connects with?
Yes, well, yes. When Warrior Drive crosses New Salem, after about 2-3 blocks, Beasy Road goes off to the right.
Okay.
And so Beasy Road then will go off to the right. Beasy Road runs in front of the armory that's under construction. It will be then the access to Lazy Days, and it'll also be one of the ways to get to this new construction here on this 14-acre lot.
Okay.
So it's a 3-lane curb and gutter.
Okay.
Road, new road. It's been on the books for a long time, but until just recently that it was graded and curb and gutter, but nothing else. But it's now been, doesn't have a top coat on it yet, but it's dry. It's got at least binder coat, I believe that's right, Sam, all the way up to the end of the Lazy Days lot now. So I'll have another couple hundred feet to connect it up to the connector road.
And Mr. Ives, the little triangular piece that you'll be negotiating with this homeowner, is that just for like that little back corner piece? It's not the entire lot, is it?
No, all we need is a very small triangle there that that will actually be under our bridge.
Okay.
Or maybe part of the bridge approach will be on it, but excuse me, it'll be to construct that bridge, right?
Mr. Ives, do you have the address of that property by chance?
The one we need?
Thank you.
I'm sorry, 2265 Racket Club Drive. I've been working on it as Lot 22 of that subdivision.
Well, very exciting project, and so today you need just recommendation for approval from here we go. I should know this. We had this in our last 3 weeks of training, whether we get to approve it, whether we just recommend, where do we fall on this one?
This is a recommendation to council that they accept that the city donate the right-of-way we've talked about, continue with the construction commitments we've talked about, and accept the donations of the other rights-of-way that are mentioned here, and include the acquisition of that corner piece. We're hopeful for a consensual transaction, but we will ask council to authorize condemnation if that does become necessary.
I imagine we will have a motion to.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We recommend everything that Mr. Ives just said.
Exactly.
So second.
So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Jaco?
Commissioner Garland,
Aye.
Commissioner Halliburton,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Russell,
Aye.
Commissioner Silas,
Aye.
Commissioner Wright,
Aye.
Chair Jones.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Ives, and everybody that's been working on that. Very exciting project indeed. Do we have any other staff reports or other business today? Okay. If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you.